Good evening and welcome to another episode of ThinkPad Mods and Rebuilds. In this installment, we're going to build a Windows 11 hybrid installer disk, and we're going to install Windows 11 on a T400, Lenovo ThinkPad T400. So I previously downloaded a copy of the Windows 11 ISO. This is version 22,051.210.617-2050, and that's sitting in my downloads folder. So basically what you want to do is you want to get a USB thumb drive. It should be at least a 2.0 USB drive. I got a 3-pack of them from Best Buy. This is what they look like. I don't know how well you can see that, but they've got a nice cover that's integrated into the body of the thumb drive. I got a 3-pack of them for like 15 bucks. So you want to have at least a USB 2.0, 3.0 or 3.1 would be better, but 2.0 works fine for our purposes. So I already have the drive that I'm going to build in the USB slot, and you're going to use Rufus, which is a free download on the web. By the way, I should also mention that the T450S that we're using to do the prep work here already has Windows 11 on it. So click yes, and it comes up with this window. This is a PNY 32 gigabyte. You want to have at least a 16. An 8, I think 8 gigabyte is the minimum, but a 16 is better, and 32 gigs is best, I think. So what you want to do is you pull this up and navigate to the ISO file that you want and click open it. And you want to, for older laptops, you want to use master boot record instead of graphic partition table. And the reason for that is Windows 11 wants to use natively, it wants to use UEFI to install the operating system. But you can, using this method, use partition scheme master boot record. So this is the volume label it's going to have when it's done. And so basically we're all set to go. Standard Windows installation. We've selected the ISO file that we downloaded from the web, and then you just click start. So once it's all done, Rufus does its thing and you close it. Open up your file explorer, and you've got this bootable USB drive with Windows 11 Insider Preview on it. And if you open it up, it kind of looks like this. So to build the hybrid installer, what we're going to do is we're going to go into Sources and look for Install. Past it. Install.wim. So what we're going to do, because this is the Windows 11 installer, we're going to take and we're going to copy that file. And it takes a while because you notice it's 5 gigabytes. And just copy it to the desktop. Now that's going to take a little while because it's a 5 gigabyte file. So we'll resume when it's done. Okay, so we're back. So the install.wim file is now on the desktop, and as you can see, let's click on properties. It's pretty huge. It's 5.03 gigabytes. So we got that off of the Windows 11 installer USB stick. So we're going to eject that one. And then what we do is we put in a Windows 10 installer USB that we previously created using the media creation tool. And we open that up. And navigate to sources. And you're looking for the install file. And in this case, if I remember correctly, it's install ESD. Not sure what the difference is between the ESD extension and the WIM, but what I did was, per direction of several videos that I saw online, I just deleted the install.esd and then copied the install.wim to that directory. And I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so navigate to the x64 because this Windows 10 installer that I used has both 32-bit and 64-bit. So I want to put it in the 64-bit sources, and you can see where I copied it right. Where is it? There it is, install.wim. So that's going to put that in that directory when you copy it in there, and then you just close it. So now you have your hybrid installer. So basically it's a Windows 10 installer USB with the Windows 11 Insider Preview installer file embedded in it, copied into it. So at this point, we can go ahead and eject that drive. And it's a cruiser fit. And then we'll shut this one down and fire up the T400 and get it ready to install. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to get into the BIOS, because if you haven't done this already, you need to configure it to boot from the USB stick first. So what you want to do is go to Startup. And while we're in here, I'm going to run through some BIOS stuff just to kind of... This one's already been updated to the latest BIOS. So I shut all of this off. So everything on this screen should say disabled, because unless you're in a enterprise environment, it doesn't need to wake up on the LAN or have the BIOS flashed over the LAN or have the option ROM for the LAN enabled. Hard drive direct memory access needs to be enabled. Turn on the radios. Serial port I disable. Parallel port I make it ECP. You can use bidirectional. PCI, that's just the interrupts for the PCI. USB I set to USB BIOS support enabled, and I leave off the always on USB. Keyboard, mouse, automatic disabled and independent. Display should nearly always be ThinkPad LCD. Unless you've got a busted screen, then you can set it up for an external. Timer wake with battery operation, that's a guaranteed way to run your battery down if that's enabled. Turn on speed step, put automatic or maximum performance for AC mode, battery optimized, maximize performance for the adaptive thermal environment, and balanced for the battery. These can all be normal and automatic for the CD-ROM speed, and power management, bus power management, express power management, all automatic. I set up the beep for low battery and I turn the other two off. Extended memory tests, that increases your boot up time. I mean, that's good to do like once or twice to test the memory, but after that it's kind of unnecessary, I think. Should be set to automatic host controller interface, because that's faster than compatibility. Compatibility is for older operating systems like XP. CPU, always enable core multiprocessing. And I turn off the virtualization technology because I'm not going to run virtual machines on this. If I was going to run a virtual machine on this, I would turn that on. Active management technology, I turn that off. If you're going to have the console on, VT 100 plus is, I guess, the way to go. Docking station, enable legacy devices. That gets you out of that. Date and time, pretty obvious. Security, shouldn't be any passwords on anything. If something is enabled here, you need to disable it. If the BIOS is locked, there are ways to unlock these things. Complex, but it can be done. Subject for another video. I turn off everything in here. This has a fingerprint reader. I set it up for internal, so you could use that to log into Windows if you wanted. Security mode normal. Reset the fingerprint data. Security chip inactive. Disabled. I disable it because that takes memory to run that. BIOS flashing by end users enabled. Memory protection should be enabled. I/O port access. Anything that the laptop doesn't have, I would disable, because there's no need in having it enabled if it doesn't even have it. Like if there's no fingerprint reader, I would set this to disabled, but there is, so I've got it enabled. The other thing is, if it had a smart card slot, you could enable that, or if it doesn't, and that was showing up in the BIOS, you could disable that. But for our purposes, everything on here can be enabled. Anti-theft, CompuTrace. If this is enabled and active, you need to call CompuTrace and get it disabled, because a laptop this old, nobody's going to be interested in stealing it, I would hope. Also, full theft protection, module activation disabled. Let's see here. Escape. Okay, startup. For the boot device, you want to have it, and this is where we were going with this, you want it to be the USB hard disk, which is the thumb drive, and I don't have it in there yet. Then USB CD, and then the built-in CD-ROM, DVD, and then your drives. Hard disk 0 is always going to be the hard drive bay. And I just exclude this stuff from the boot order because I'm not going to use the LAN to boot it. It doesn't have a second CD. It doesn't have a USB floppy drive, and it doesn't have a third hard drive. For network, I don't want it to boot from a network, so I just disable all of that by typing in X and move them all to exclude from the boot order. Boot mode quick, option keys displayed, yes. And then in order to be able to boot from specific devices, always enable the F12 option. And then we're going to exit saving changes. And at this point, I'm going to put in my installer disk and to the hard drive over here, or to the USB port. And these T400s have vertical USBs on both sides. So you need to pay attention to the orientation that you're sticking it in so you don't break the tab in there. So that one's vertical, and the little light is lit, so it's recognizing it. So we're going to hit exit saving changes, and we'll see what we get when we boot up. While it's doing that, I'm going to plug my mouse in over on this side. The right side has a vertical port too, and it should, because I have it. Okay, in our case here, I could set it up with Windows 10 32-bit if I wanted to, but actually the Windows 10 setup 64-bit is actually Windows 11. So we're going to do that and go ahead and let it do its thing. And we'll be back in a second once it gets done loading this up. Once it gets done loading the files, you're going to be presented with the Windows 10 installer logo, and everything behind this thing is going to look like Windows 10 installer. The Windows 11 installer, that window piece is kind of tilted a little bit towards you, so it looks different. But we're going to install Windows 11 on this. It's just going to look like Windows 10 as we're installing it. So we want to do install now. And this should go pretty fast, actually, because it's a solid state drive with 8 gigs of memory. I don't have a product key. This has already had Windows 10 on it. So okay. Well, that didn't go according to plan. So I'm only presented with 2 options. Windows 11 Home. I'm going to do Windows 10 Pro and see what we get. This should install Windows 11, actually. Yeah, that's the drive we want to put it on. And it's going to run through this and we'll come back. Okay, so it looks like we're getting ready to boot into Windows 11 here. What's interesting is when it's doing the install, the Windows thing, this little logo, on Windows 10 it's kind of tilted that way, and on Windows 11 it's flat. When it comes up to this screen, Windows 10 is tilted this way and Windows 11 is flat, and it looks like a whole different logo, really. Same kind of form factor, but it has a different appearance to it. So this is looking pretty good, actually. We'll see what we get here. It's going to take a little while, obviously. This is not a new computer. So the things that it checks for, first of all, with Windows 11, you absolutely have to have a 64-bit processor. You cannot install, there is no such thing as Windows 11 32-bit, at least not at this point. Whether they develop that later or not, I doubt it. But at any rate, so that's the one absolute that you can't get around at this point, is that it has to be a 64-bit capable processor. It checks for TPM 2.0 with the Insider Preview version. So it's upside down, dang it. So if I was to use this disk, it would say not compatible. It needs Trusted Platform Module 2.0, and it's also going to want to boot it into a UEFI partition. So if it's not UEFI capable and it doesn't have TPM 2.0, the regular Windows 11 installer will fail. It won't install. But using that method where we basically build a hybrid installer using the installer file from 11 and the rest of the guts of the USB from Windows 10, you can get around both of those requirements, the TPM 2.0 and the UEFI, because remember we created this with master boot record. It gets around both of those, but you can't get around the requirement for 64-bit. So it's doing its first reboot here, and we'll see what we get. Should be presented with a window here that starts some serious setup in just a second. And I'm probably going to pull that USB stick out of there shortly, because we won't need it after this. And just a moment is done, and there we have a Windows 11 setup screen. And let's see how much of this we're. Yep, we're in the United States. I don't know if this is the first Windows 11 setup on an older Lenovo or not. Is this the right keyboard? Yes. No, we're going to skip that. But it's based on looking on YouTube. I didn't see any other videos of Windows 11 being put on an old ThinkPad successfully. I saw where somebody had attempted to put it on a T500, and if it works on this, it should work on a T500. So I'm going to, for right now, I'm going to click I don't have internet, continue with limited setup. I can go back and fix all that later. Who's going to use this device? I'm just going to call it user. And if you don't connect to the internet, you don't have to put a password in, which is kind of nice because you can always go back and add that later. But if you're hooked to the internet, it's going to want a password. Turn off location services. Find my device if you want to keep that enabled, sure. Only send minimal diagnostic data. Inking and typing, that's optional. Tailored experiences, that's how they send you a lot of advertising. Same with this, advertising ID. So I basically turn everything off on this. I don't need find my device because I'm not going to lose this thing. And then click accept. And it's going to go back to just a moment. And you get some of the verbiage on these is a little bit different, but some of it is the same. The lettering, the fonts looks different. This may take a few minutes. This is how you know for sure you're in Windows 11 because they have that splash kind of spread screen that makes you wonder whether your LCD is going bad, as opposed to the whole screen changing color like it did in Windows 10. This might take a few minutes. Don't turn off your PC. We're gonna pause this and we'll come back when this is done. And when it says it's this may take a few minutes, they weren't kidding. It's been a couple 3 minutes already, but you can see how the font and everything is different, and some of the verbiage is different. We should get a desktop here shortly. Now, one thing that comes to mind when I was doing the BIOS setup, this particular ThinkPad does not have a discrete graphics card in it. I think it was called Optimus Graphics for this generation. If it does, I would turn that off and disable it in the BIOS until you get all of this installed, because it may cause you a problem and may prevent you from booting the laptop because it's probably looking for a driver that it can't find. So there you have Windows 11 successfully booted on a laptop that's, I want to say this is at least 10 years old. Let's go ahead and safely remove the Cruiser Fit. And that time it didn't give me a eject message, but the light did go out, so golly, that's in there. Okay. All right, so there you have it. Windows 11. Just for giggles, I'm going to turn this thing over and see what the build date on it is. So bear with me while I flip the laptop over. This is built the month before I came back from overseas, so August of 08. So this is a 13-year-old laptop running Windows 11. Now, will you be able to do that with the final version of Windows 11? Don't know. Sure would be nice not to orphan all of these laptops that are perfectly capable of running Windows 10, and then assigning, you know, arbitrary qualities like TPM and UEFI as must-haves to be able to run this operating system. That's going to orphan a lot of laptops, but maybe that's the goal. They want to have people just wholesale go out and buy new laptops. I'm not a big fan of that, because all that does is fill up the landfills with waste, because a lot of people don't bother to recycle their laptops. They just throw them in the trash, which is criminal in my estimation. Contaminates the groundwater and definitely causes a problem. I can't say that I'm a big fan of this background as a long-term thing, but you can change it. There is a whole lot to like about Windows 11, I gotta say. You can put different themes in here. I went to the Windows store and got the Bing daily wallpaper. It looks pretty good with that. It looks more like Windows 10 with that, but you can configure this however you want. Background light bloom. Let's see here. Somehow or other I ended up picking something here. Choose a background color. There's a gray. There's back to pictures. There's a nice background. Notice how the taskbar and the system tray look completely different, and you can obviously configure that however you want. But so anyway, there you have it. Windows 11 on a laptop that's 13 years old next month. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give it a like and a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time. I've got another video in the works that is basically rebuilding an X220. It's in progress right now. I have been waiting for some parts that finally came in, and we'll get that video out here within the next few days to a week or so. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.